I overall do agree with the sentiment that the intervention in Kosovo was illegal but legitimate. This is because the actions that NATO took blatantly disregarded the wishes of the United Nations. This is because NATO acted without UN authorization, and intervening in internal affairs of a sovereign state without the permission from the UN is strictly forbidden. However, it's obviously not this cut and dry because there was a possibility that nothing would have ever happened and no one would have intervened and the conflict would have continued if they did wait for UN permission because of the mixed feelings towards the intervention. However, the particular choice of bombing Kosovo for 78 days was obviously immensely illegal. The basic procedure in this situation would have been just war, so that non-combatants were not harmed. However, they chose to bomb Kosovo for 78 days, which did not achieve this. The NATO troops deliberately struck infrastructure in Serbia, such as electrical grids and water facilities, that did indirect damages to citizens. This violated Article 14 of the 1977 Protocol of the 1949 Geneva Convention, which bars attacks on objects indispensable to the survival of the civilian population. So essentially, in every way, this act was clearly illegal. However, that's not to say it wasn't legitimate. It was organized and a thought-out attack, just perhaps not the best choice in the situation, or any other given situation, honestly. But I will say that NATO did try and take precautions, like taking measures to stabilize the neighbors of Yugoslavia, such as Albania and Fyrom, so that the conflict would not spill over into other countries. And they also did hold military exercises in both countries in order to help them deal with the influx of refugees. I think that NATO felt they had to do something because they couldn't just let other countries blatantly disobey their ideals and breach innocent people's human rights. I just ultimately believe that they made the wrong decision on how to intervene properly. Ultimately, I believe that the intervention in Kosovo was extremely necessary, just not exactly successful. I agree with the idea of protecting human rights, obviously, and the intervention of NATO in this particular situation. This is because as soon as an act like ethnic cleansing is occurring, it is up to NATO to put an end and to protect human rights. Ultimately, it may have never ended if NATO did not step in, and I do also believe that NATO did take necessary steps to try and go about the intervention peacefully. While maybe not done immensely diplomatically, they did try and force peace. NATO decided, led by Secretary of State Madeleine K. Albright, to summon both the Serbians and the KLA to a French chateau and presented them a detailed plan for political autonomy in Kosovo under NATO. And demanded that they both agree to it, and if they did not, then they would be punished by their military if they refused. It's not a shock that they both refused to sign it, but it's at least important to take this into consideration that NATO did have a plan to try and go about this peacefully. It just didn't exactly work. However, what the actions after this is what made it so unsuccessful. That Secretary of State, Madeleine K. Albright, categorized Milosevic, which was the Serbian and Yugoslavian president at the time, as a schoolyard bully, and then in order to combat him, decided to continuously bomb Kosovo for 78 days. And to me, this just seems like a miscalculation to call him a schoolyard bully and then destroy the entire city. So in the end, the conflict and the result were entirely backwards, as the Albanians fought for independence based on the right to national self-determination, and the Serbs were fighting to keep Kosovo as a part of Yugoslavia in the name of keeping its existing borders. In the end, NATO had intervened in a civil war, helped defeat one side while also embracing the position of the other side in which they defeated. They didn't want Kosovo to become independent, but they also didn't want the Serbians to continue to ethnically cleanse Kosovo. Ultimately, it seems as if nothing was solved. They did stop the human rights breach at a certain point, but after bombing them for 78 days. Although I don't know exactly what actions should have been taken to prevent this unsatisfying and unproductive ending, I can confidently say that bombing a city for 78 days is never necessary and that it definitely caused a detriment to the peace that NATO was trying to create. On another note, it has to be mentioned that the human rights of only certain groups matter to NATO. NATO doesn't play by the same rules every time when it comes to humanitarian intervention. The fighting in Kosovo was immensely less detrimental, and there were far fewer deaths resulting in the conflict in Kosovo compared to African countries such as Sierra Leone, Sudan, or Rwanda. So humanitarian intervention was seemingly only important and necessary in European countries and not African ones.